Hi guys, we're busy with chemistry. It's Dr. Mal here, and we will have a look at the actual movement of two atoms when they move towards each other to form a molecule. And there's energy and there's distances that we are going to have a look at. So it's important that we know when things bind to each other, it will form polar and non-polar molecules. But the one aspect that we'll have to have a look at is the energy. Whether it's polar or non-polar, what's the energies that's all related with this binding of two atoms? So we've got this graph, and this graph you have to have in front of you. So I want you to draw on a piece of paper on your y-axis there and draw this with me. You put your potential energy. So I just want you to put potential energy on the y-axis. And you won't be able to really grasp it if you don't do it with me. You are going to look at this video once and once and once again because you don't understand. So do it with me and make sure that you really go through the steps exactly as I do. On my x-axis, I've got the distance between the nuclei. Now, important, when we have a look at the distance between the nuclei, you'll see there's a PM. Now, that's a picometer. And a picometer is 10 to the minus 12 meters. It's minute. It is very, very small. Nevertheless, we've got the y-axis where we've got the potential energy, and here we've got the distances, and we know now it's a very small unit. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to start with the two nuclei further apart and then moving them nearer to each other. So I'm going to start here where we've got position A, and you can draw these two there, and what you know, it's the lowest energy there. It's almost at zero. This is the zero potential energy. So here, when they are further apart, because they aren't near each other, nothing is repelling, nothing is attracting. They've got zero or very near to zero potential energy. As they move nearer to each other, can you see here at position B? They are a bit nearer to each other. Now at position B, they will have a little bit less potential energy. Now they are generating some energy because I'm pushing them. Now in your mind, you have to see I'm pushing electrons nearer to electrons because that's on the outside of the two. I'm also putting the nuclei, which is positive, nearer to each other. So can you see I'm actually energizing these two atoms? When they finally find each other there at position C, it is the most stable position. It's got that energy level there, and that we call the bond length. So the distance from here to there is then the bond length. That's when they actually bind. Be careful. If they move nearer to each other, can you see there they're overlapping each other? Then it's unstable again and it's too near to each other, which means these forces, these repelling forces, will be in action again. So important, why do we do this graph and how do we do it? We've got the nearest distance is obviously there, and this is unstable positions A, B, and D. So we want the distance where they are in a very stable position, and if we have the length in there, that will be the position where they actually have the bond. That's why we call this the bond length. Remember, we start where they are very far from each other there, then they move nearer, then they move where they bind, and be careful that they don't move nearer than that stable position. The bond length, it will obviously depend on the atom size. You can think the length between two atoms that size and two atoms that size will be different. Why is it different? Here I'll have more electrons, which will repel each other. So firstly, the atom size, the smaller the atom, the shorter the bond length. The second aspect, it depends on how many bonds it will form. Let's say, for instance, oxygen will have 2 bonds, whereas nitrogen will have 3 bonds. So it depends on the number of bonds that's forming. And then finally, we've done electron negativity. It is actually a very, very important aspect where they share the electrons, which of them will have the greater ability to attract the shared electrons between them. And the greater the electron negativity, the shorter the bond length, the more they are nearer to each other and attract each other. These will be the 3 factors that will determine the bond length. So where's the bond length? Again, just to stress the fact, where they are at that stable position, you measure that in your picometer and you've got a scale. So you can read it off and you can say, this is, for instance, 74 picometer. This was one of the examples that I got in one of the textbooks. It started off here with 300 picometer. Then it went a little bit nearer, let's say half of that. It then found its sweet spot there, the stable position at 74. And if it's nearer to each other, like 45, it's again unstable. Let's move to the energy. Now the energy, as we said, is on this y-axis. It's measured in kilojoule per mole, and it's the amount of energy necessary to break or form 1 mole of a specific covalent bond, and it's in the gaseous state. They measured all of the atoms in a gas phase. They were highly energized, and it's the energy that you have to break the bond or will be released when a new bond forms. Right, let's have a look. We've got here the energy, obviously here very low, a little bit more, and that is specifically at that point there where I've got my stable bond. I can actually read from my graph and see that will be the energy, that's the bond energy. Right, determined by, let's say again, the repelling force between electrons, the repelling force between the 2 nuclei. But other than repelling, we also have attraction between that nuclei and that electron, and that will be attraction forces. So you can see there's many forces that's going to play a role when we bind and we break a bond. Right, let's have a look what will determine. Again, the atom size, more bonds, and now the bond length will be, if it's a short bond length, it will be more energy needed to break or overcome that bond. So you need to know the nearer they are to each other, the more energy I'll need to break the bond. Remember, in the gaseous state, I need to break bonds. You know that. I've got my activated complex at the top, and then it'll give off energy again when they move to find a new bond length. So make sure that you understand what's happening on the graph. We'll quickly show this graph on a simulation to you, and you can also go onto the PHET. It's a very nice program. You can go to the PHET program. It's by Colorado, and play a little bit with the simulation. So here we can see a simulation. On the y-axis, the potential energy, and on the x-axis, the distance between the atoms. I've chosen argon, and I'm going to now take them apart from each other. And can you see when the distance between the atoms is getting smaller, it will move towards each other, and you can see there, it goes to the stablest position, which is right there. If it's going nearer to each other, it will be unstable and then go up again. Now let's put in the forces. We've got different forces that we can see. Can you see the forces there? Let's hide the forces. And there you can just on the graph see how they move towards each other. Let's take, for instance, oxygen. Now, oxygen is further away, and as they move towards each other, you can see they will form an atom, and there they are. So the most stable, but oxygen is a little bit off the graph. So I'm going back to neon again. So I've got that neon, and I'm moving it towards that one. And as it gets nearer, it wants to attract each other to become a stable position there. Really go into this program and play a little bit. You can change quite a few of the items on this simulation and really see what happens to the two atoms as they bind. That was nice. You could really see the two atoms moving towards each other, the stability when they were bound, and if it's moving towards each other too near, it will be unstable. Let's have a look at this equation that I'm giving you. I've got hydrogen, and I've got two molecules of hydrogen here, and I've got oxygen. So the oxygen is a diatom, as is the hydrogen, and I need them to form a water molecule. Now you know I've got this water, and it's two of them, and I've got the hydrogen and oxygen. And in order for me to form this product, I need to break each of these bonds that exist already. So the bonding energy will be the energy needed to pull them apart or to break the bond. And it's a standardized measure of 1 mole. So they actually went and they made a table for us, and you'll always be provided with a table if you get a question like this, where they said if it's hydrogen and hydrogen to bond to each other, it will take 436 kilojoule for every mole to break or to form that bond. The other one that we had was the oxygen. Now, I don't see the oxygen on this table, but we need to know that we've got to break the oxygen as well. Now, let's go to a table which we've provided with an equation that's on the table. So what I have here was the water forming from hydrogen and oxygen. A second equation that we have is 2NH3 that will now form, the bonds will break there, they will form hydrogen and nitrogen. Now let's go to our table and see if we can find that. It is N and H, and it's got to form N and N and H and H. So we're starting off with NH3. Now interesting, we've got an N with 3 hydrogens. Can you see it there? And I've got 2 of those molecules. And each of them have 391 kilojoules. So let's do the calculation. I've got 300, and let me just find the value again, 391. So I've got 391 there. It's 391 times 3, because there's 3 of these, times 2. And if you do that calculation, you'll find a value of 2,346 to break those bonds. On the other hand, in my table, to form hydrogen and hydrogen will be 436, and to form nitrogen and nitrogen will be 945. Now let's see here. If I have the 3 hydrogens forming and the 1 nitrogen forming, that will give me a total energy of 2,253. That will mean I will put into the molecules to break the 2 NH3s and separate all of these. I will have to put in 2,346 joules. To form the new molecules, we'll use 2,200. So I will actually have an excess of 93 kilojoules that I'll put into this chemical reaction. And when I put energy in a reaction, I call it an endothermic. Endo meaning I put it in. There's more in than came out. So it's actually gaining energy. Let's have a look at the definitions and all the fine stuff that you've got to know in this chapter. You've got to know bond length and bond energy. And if you have an idea what happens with your graph, you will quickly be able to do the definitions from there. Remember, it's energy on the y-axis and it's the length in picometers on the x-axis. And if you understand that that's the bond energy and this is the bond length, you surely will be able to answer that question. You have to be able to interpret the graphs, describe the factors, and then calculate. If they give you a table like that, to calculate what's the energy going in and what's the energy going out. Guys, go to past papers, go and have a look at all the available sources on the internet, even your own textbook, and try and find ways to understand bond energy and bond lengths better. Bye-bye.